Hey everyone, and welcome to That Time. You know it, you love it. It is the time where me and my beautiful and lovely producer himself, Alex Partridge, answer your questions. Hey everyone, I hope you are doing well, playing and or making the games that you love. You're joined by me, your host, Max Paz, as well as the man, the myth. And that's all it is, just a myth. Alex P. for magical Partridge. I stumbled, but I recovered.
Buddy, how you doing?
Yeah, not bad. And yourself, matey?
Aye, just grand.
Would you say magical?
I would, yes.
There we
Thank
go. Then everything is right with the world. But yeah, man, we're here. We're here to answer some great questions asked by all of you amazing gurus. And this is a time that we, appreciate, and we also appreciate your questions because, we like to interact with all of you people. So without further ado, before we get into actually, with this one's to me not as many questions, just due to the fact of time. So we do apologise for that there. But no, it isn't because we love you. It's because I'm busy and I don't love you. It's a side note. It's not the main reason. Don't worry. This is why I don't have friends, Alex.
I mean, I stick around, so there must be something good, right?
Stockholm Syndrome. It's amazing what it can do.
Living and breathing example right here.
Ooh.
But no, we've got 3 great questions from the community this week we've picked out. So should we get straight into it, mate?
Yep, let's do this, buddy.
Awesome. So our first question this week comes from Eric, and they've asked, how much time, on average, do you spend on the blocking phase of a level?
Okay, so yeah, this one, it's, a lot of factors do come into this due to size of the location, time period, production schedule, all of these things. But you're looking around about a week to 2 weeks if you take maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, depending on the iteration process as well. But the block out will take maybe for the first phase 2 to 3 days, again, depending on location. But for your first simple block out, it should take along around about that. Then you'll get it reviewed by either your peers, your lead, directors, all of that at some point. But your first one should take a few days. Again, it might not. But that's roughly on average. Then after that, it'll be iterating the block out. Before, we put in some gameplay, we'll do something along the lines of trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we improve this? Where do we see the flaws in this? Is there something that we don't think logically makes sense? These sort of things will come into it. But yes, the first one takes 2 to 3 days roughly to get something. And then, as I said, it's iteration from there. But so far, that's what I'd say average is at the minute. Yeah, but it's not, when I say that, it's not every level designer who does that. Some are faster than me, some are slower than me. And as I said, there's other factors to think about as well. But that's roughly there.
Depends on the size of your level as well. Like, obviously, it's apples and oranges if you're comparing, say, something that you're doing as a solo project or as an individual compared to, big AAA levels. It's completely different categories of work.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not an exact science.
Exactly, mate. You're completely right. It's hard to say, but that's roughly, and then you'll go from there and you'll change blockouts when you start adding things like gameplay into it as well, after you start to do your gameplay pass, because things don't work, or maybe the enemy patrols is more difficult than you realised, so you have to go tweak things here. Maybe the exit needs to change because of some sort of reason. All of these things eventually, will eat into that time and come out more for it.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I hope that answers the question on that one there, guys. It feels like a very underwhelming answer.
It's a quick one, that one. Just must be a record for like least amount of time Max has talked in a continuous run.
I mean, I do love the sound of my... No, I'm not going to make that joke because someone's going to take that too seriously, and I don't want people to think that is not the case. Yeah. Sure.
So, number 2?
Number 2.
Excellent. Brad has asked, when do you start to think about things like composition/leading lines and other types of guidance techniques, and how do you implement them into your blockouts?
It's a very good question. I think it's one of the first things you start to think about, if I'm being honest, because you start to break things down, because once you know what the objective is and kind of how you think the level's going to go leading to that, you kind of start planning that, such as your leading lines. Think about, like, how do you frame the objective? What is it that you can do in order to help that with guiding, such as, using vehicles maybe to point in a certain direction, having different sizes of doors to help appeal, or recessing or extruding them. All of that does come into play very much from the beginning, in my opinion. And that's what you should, start to think about. You'll iterate on these a little bit later, but it's very early on, because also you'll break your levels down into different sections. Your objective might be, for example, inside the basement of a building. So your first thing is, well, how do I point them in the direction of a door or an entry point? But then you'll start to go, okay, well, once they're in this side of the building, how do we let them know it's then down to the basement? All of these things you'll start to consider, but it's done pretty early on. It's then added on more once you have player feedback, because when you watch someone play it, they might not see the objectives as clear as you do. So that's when you'll start to expand upon these, adding different techniques in order to try help the player as well. That's really my answer there. Again, I feel we're flying through these at a rapid pace.
We are. We're definitely setting a record here.
It's because we don't like talking to anyone now. Ugh. Now that we're these big shots.
It's like this. Max is treating this more like a sprint than a marathon here.
Every time someone asks me a question, like, yeah, a couple of days. And that's the end.
Trying to think if there's anything I've got to add to that, but no, I don't think so. Wow. Yeah. This is going to be like the shortest episode in LDL history at this rate, mate.
That's it. Well, I just think, it's one of those things that you should consider, because once you've done your paper design, you'll understand what the flow of it all is, and I think that can help right off the bat, because now you know where your objectives are. You'll then be able to highlight from there. But as I said, sometimes you'll miss things and you'll need someone to point things out, so you won't get everything right off the first time, but it comes early. And I think when you start to know more and more techniques, the quicker and sooner you'll add them into your levels as you progress as a designer.
Love games? Love game design? We do too. So why not help us here at Level Design Lobby spread the word? With Patreon, from as little as $1 per month, you can do just that. And new for 2019, we have more reward tiers and even more awesome perks on offer, such as access to our community Discord, level design weekends, exclusive talks by professional designers, one-on-one sessions, and much more. Sound interesting? Then head on over to patreon.com/Level Design Lobby for more information and to pledge your support today. As always, we'd like to say a massive thank you to all the game gurus who've backed us so far. It's thanks to your generous support that we can continue to grow, pursue new opportunities, and bring you new, awesome, and exciting content. So thank you. And now back to our regularly scheduled programme.
Yeah, so now that we've extended that answer out by 15 seconds, we can now move on to the third and final question.
So our final question comes from John, and they've asked, have you ever had any experience with making mod levels for other games? If so, which? If not, what are some games you would like to try to make levels for?
Yes, once, and only once. That was for Little Big Planet, back when they had their editor, which obviously has now led to Dreams, which had a pre-release or should we say alpha beta stage that just came out to the public recently. And yeah, that was I did 3 levels for that, and they were really bad. Really bad, you know.
Baby steps.
Yes, yeah, well, that was it. They were I wasn't much of a PC gamer, I was more of a console gamer, so this kind of modding when I was a teenager I didn't really get into it. I was, say, something more unaware. And when I did find out about things I could do to make games, I was learning the tools like Unity or the Unreal kit that you got with the copy of Gears of War on PC. So that was more what I was trying to do, was learn that tech, I'd say. And yeah, no, I did it on them, and there were some amazing people who used those editors and made some fantastic levels. I was not one of them. But they were some really cool stuff, and it was a really powerful tool. There was a lot to learn and to do, and especially when the second one came out, there was so much more. A friend of mine did some good stuff too as well. So yeah, there was some. That's the thing I definitely tried to. I should say that's the modding that I'd spent most of my time there upon. It didn't go much further than that, I will say, but that was my first one for it.
So are there any games that you would perhaps like to try to make levels for that have modding available or content?
I think some of the modding kits that I wish I had tried was, for example, in 2016's version of Doom. That seemed to have a really nice kit. They were essentially like Lego pieces that you snap together to make something better. So I really enjoyed the look of that, and it was something that caught my eye. I was really impressed with that. And it was. I also think that Doom had an amazing style of gameplay, which I think levels would have been fun to do because you had to keep the action fast-paced compared to other first-person shooters. So, it wasn't so much about cover placement. It was more about how do you make the player move within those arenas for them. So that one was definitely one that I wish I did try. Trying to think of other editors that there was out there. Maybe I'd like to try Dreams, but I'd love to do it more in VR because that just seems way more fun to try build that stuff in VR. But no, I didn't play much of Skyrim, and obviously that had a big modding community. I never played it. But maybe Portal. I think there were some modding tools available for Portal too, if I'm...
Yeah, there was the sort of standard source SDK background stuff they put out for that you could make levels with, but then they put out I can't remember exactly what they called it, but it was something like the Multiverse Initiative, where they made this really neat little editor for that anyone could pick up and use. It was really simple and easy to use. I remember when that first came out being really impressed by that little tool. I was never able to make anything any good in it because... I don't know, I could never quite wrap my head around the sort of the complexities of... Because Portal was all about the interaction of the different mechanics and how you chain and use them together, and I always struggled to sort of work out a good use of them, sort of a good order of operation in order to make something that felt sort of clever and challenging for the player. So, yeah, I mean, I was going to mention that if you didn't, but I'm glad you brought that one up.
I think that's it. I think also that it's that challenge as well that you're saying, about making something that feels clever and entertaining for the player that rewards them. Because you've worked on Esper 2, so you've worked on a puzzle game. I've not really. I did some brief one on a mobile one called Stan's Car Park or something like that. Sold millions, top of the app. No, but I've never had a chance to work on a puzzle game like that, so I think it was a very interesting one to see how you figure out how to do that and keep players entertained, not frustrated. I think that's the hard balance.
It's definitely something I should consider looking at again, considering I now have a bit more experience in sort of creating that type of content and gameplay. But as to whether or not that'll happen or not, it's a completely other thing. I've got 1,000,001 other things on my list that I want to do first that are more important, unfortunately, because life gets in the way.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'd love to, and I want to do at some point, is I want to make a God of War themed level, like in Unreal or Unity, like we did for one of the level design weekends.
Oh, yeah.
I would like to do that. It's on my to-do list at some point. I said some point. So,
Yeah.
you know. But other than that, they're the main ones that stick out to me. I know stuff like, there's one called, the guys that made Hello Games, who made, goddamn, why have I forgotten the name?
No Man's Sky.
Thank you, sir. They had a game called Joe Dangerous, which had a level editing kit built in it, which I think would have been a fun one just to try there. But yeah, that's really it that comes to my mind in terms of it. Like I said, I'm not really involved in the modding community. Not to say there's anything bad or anything with it. There's some amazing designers who've come out of the modding community. It's just not one that I found myself in. But those are the ones that spring to mind for me, mate.
And it's interesting, going back to sort of where you started, like when I read this question and we started talking about mod kits, I'd completely forgotten about the sort of easy to use editors like you got in, like you mentioned, Little Big Planet, and of course that I'd completely forgotten about that as a category of modding. When I think of modding, I always think of the very intensive sort of background stuff that we do, using like specialized creation kits. You mentioned Skyrim before. That has a notoriously unfriendly interface, the creation kit for Skyrim. Again, a game I would love to be able to make a mod for, but I just get so flummoxed by the interface for that. It's madness. But back to the console editors, like back in the day, I think I probably share this with Max in the past. I wasn't so much of a PC gamer. I sort of came to PC about 2011-ish was when it really took off for me. But prior to that, I was a console gamer, and another game that I did try my hand at trying to make content for in an in-game editor was Halo 3's Forge.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'd completely forgotten about it. I remember playing some awesome levels on that platform. Like, the amount of talent that was in the community, again, just was completely mind-blowing. Yeah. But it wasn't something I could quite muster myself, certainly back then. Obviously, we're talking like 10 years ago. Over 10 years ago. Halo 3 came out in 2007. Put that on your calendar.
Jesus.
So, yeah. I didn't possess even a fraction of the knowledge that I possess now in terms of, understanding, levels and layouts and, generating ideas that are fun. So I did try and do bits and pieces, but I don't know. Again, it never came out feeling right. There was a lot of symmetry, which isn't always a bad thing, but it just didn't feel very interesting to me in terms of what I was making.
Yes,
and that's probably me being a little bit self-critical. But compared to what some other people in that community were putting out, I was like just not able to hold a candle to that.
Yeah, it's tough.
But in terms of games that I like to make levels for, I actually started thinking about this probably after I came out of uni. And back at that point, I was a big player of Team Fortress 2.
All right.
I really wanted to make a level for Team Fortress 2. And I actually started, I can probably still go and find them. I've got some concept sketches for some little areas and some draft layouts. And I even actually did start making like one of the spawn rooms and like the final terminus. I wanted to do a payload map. So I actually did start blocking out like the final point of the payload map where the red team was spawning. And yeah, but I just never got very far. I mean, if anyone out there has ever used the Source SDK, their Hammer editor is not exactly the most friendly to use.
I've heard that.
It's been a good number of years since I've used it, so the memory of the intricacies of what was wrong with it have like long faded from my memory, but I do remember it being quite a challenging piece of software to use. That's not to say, again, that you can't make something absolutely fantastic with it.
Oh, no.
But, again, it was just... I think that I'd say the complexity of the software of getting everything working in that was very
Yeah.
was very involved, and the documentation I think at that point wasn't brilliant either. So again, it's just another idea that never really fully materialized. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Anything more recent, I mean.
Well, that Mario Maker springs to mind now, because that was a whole game dedicated to making Mario levels. It's not one I wish to do work on personally, but it is one that obviously had a massive impact, and now they're going to make another one or re-release it on the Switch now for it. But I don't know. It's not... and there's nothing wrong with Mario. I think they've got some amazing levels. Just not... It wasn't one that jumped out to me. And I was like, oh, okay, I'd like to do this. But yeah, no... There's some great stuff out there, you know. But with that, we're going to wrap this one up. And we want to thank Jonathan especially for making sure that we made this episode last longer than 5 minutes. So that was a good one on him. And yeah, apologies for flying through some of those questions as well. It was not our intention, but, you know, simpler answers in terms of delivering today. So there we are. But thank you all very, very much for joining us. If you want to reach out to Alex and get in contact with him, how can they do so, sir?
You can do so via Twitter. I am at AlexMPartridge.
Awesome. If you would like to reach out to me, then you can do so at MaxPairs, as well as email in to the leveldesignlobby@gmail.com. And if you do want to support the podcast, then please head over to patreon.com/Level Design Lobby to not only get some amazing perks, but to help make sure that we constantly improve the quality of the podcast. So thank you all very, very much, and we will catch you all next time.
Bye-bye.